Friends, a political drama is unfolding in the very heart of the European Union, the scale of which could forever change the face of the entire continent. What once began as barely noticeable cracks in the foundation of European unity is rapidly turning into a real tectonic rift that threatens to split the seemingly unshakable union of European states. And at the center of this political earthquake was an unexpected figure, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, whose recent actions have made the entire European establishment shudder. On a quiet evening, when most European politicians were already preparing for the traditional Christmas holidays and summing up the results of the outgoing year, a statement was made that instantly blew up the information space and made political observers forget about the upcoming holidays. Hungary belongs to the Hungarians. Germany belongs to the Germans. Viktor Orban's words at a conference in Budapest reverberated through all European capitals. There was a deep political subtext behind the seemingly simple phrase that could turn the entire architecture of the modern European Union upside down. Today, I will tell you about how the alliance of Alice Weidel and Viktor Orban made the entire political elite of Europe nervous. Let's not delay, friends. Let's get started. In order to fully understand the drama of what is happening, it is necessary to make a short excursion into the recent past. Just a few years ago, the political landscape of Europe looked completely different. Viktor Orban and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, despite periodic disagreements, acted as partners capable of finding compromises even in the most difficult situations. Hungary, for all its special position on a number of issues, remained an integral part of the European family, and its leader skillfully balanced between national interests and the demands of Brussels. But serious bells rang when the Alternative for Germany, AfD party, led by the charismatic Alice Weidel, began to rapidly gain popularity in Germany. What was initially perceived by many as a temporary phenomenon, generated by the dissatisfaction of some voters with migration policy, began to turn into a powerful political movement capable of seriously claiming a place in the highest echelons of power. And it was here that the first serious political rift occurred. While official Berlin, led by Scholz, continued to advocate for further European integration and an open-door policy, more and more German citizens began to listen to alternative voices. The AfD proposed a completely different vision of the future. A return to traditional values, the priority of national interests over pan-European ones, and strict control of migration. This situation created a unique political opportunity for Viktor Orban, who saw in his relations with Brussels a chance to form a fundamentally new political alliance. His recent rapprochement with Alice Weidel is not just a tactical move, but a sign of deep tectonic shifts in European politics. We can no longer turn a blind eye to what is happening to our Europe, Orban said at a recent meeting with European conservative leaders. In his opinion, the policy of unrestrained globalization and uncontrolled migration leads to the erosion of national identity and cultural collapse. We don't want Hungary to turn into a country of migrant workers, and I understand the Germans who also don't want this for their country, he added. These words of the Hungarian Prime Minister found an unexpectedly wide response not only among his compatriots, but also among a significant part of German voters. According to recent opinion polls, more and more German citizens express dissatisfaction with the current political course and show interest in alternative political forces. The situation is particularly acute due to the fact that all these events are unfolding against the backdrop of a serious crisis. Europe is facing unprecedented energy price increases, galloping inflation, and rising unemployment. In such circumstances, calls for the protection of national interests and stricter control over migration are finding an increasing response among ordinary citizens. These challenges cast a shadow on the stability and future of Europe, encouraging people to look for political forces that can offer alternative solutions. But the most interesting thing may be ahead. Many political analysts believe that we are witnessing only the beginning of a large-scale transformation of the European political system. If the alliance of Viktor Orban and Alice Weidel really grows stronger and begins to attract allies from other EU countries, this may lead to a fundamental reformatting of European politics. As noted by the well-known European political scientist Franz Mayer, what is currently happening in relations between Hungary and Germany can become a catalyst for much larger processes. We are seeing how a new political reality is being formed, where traditional alliances are losing their importance, giving way to new, unexpected coalitions. It is especially important to note the reaction of Brussels to what is happening. The European bureaucracy, accustomed to solving problems through compromises and gradual concessions, was not ready for such a development. Attempts to put pressure on Hungary through economic mechanisms have not yet brought the desired result, but rather, on the contrary, they strengthen Viktor Orban's position inside the country and increase his authority among Eurosceptics. Countries such as Poland, Italy, and Austria also have significant political forces that could join the emerging alliance. Until recently, Euroscepticism was perceived as a marginal phenomenon, but with the growing influence of the AfD in Germany and the resolute position of Viktor Orban, it is taking on a very real shape. It is especially interesting to observe the reaction of the traditional European elites. Olaf Scholz found himself in an extremely difficult situation. While maintaining a course towards deepening European integration, he is increasingly faced with the growing discontent of his own citizens. Recent opinion polls show that more and more people consider the current migration policy to be erroneous and advocate its revision. We are witnessing a fundamental crisis of trust between European elites and ordinary citizens, as political analyst Maria Schmidt notes. People are tired of abstract conversations about European values and want concrete solutions to their everyday problems. If traditional political forces are unable to offer such solutions, alternative movements will only gain popularity. The situation is complicated by the fact that Europe's economic problems continue to grow. Inflation is hitting the pockets of ordinary citizens, energy prices remain high, and economic growth prospects look increasingly dim. In such circumstances, calls for the protection of national interests and stricter control over migration are finding an increasing response among the population. Social media and alternative sources of information play a special role in the development of the situation. Previously, traditional media largely shaped public opinion, but now citizens have access to a wide variety of points of view and actively discuss what is happening on social networks. This creates a completely new information reality, in which the old methods of political influence are working worse and worse. Meanwhile, the political temperature continues to rise. Every new statement by Viktor Orban or Alice Weidel provokes a strong reaction from both supporters and opponents of the changes. And most importantly, more and more ordinary citizens are starting to think about what kind of future they want for themselves and their children. "We are facing a historic choice," said one of the leaders of the AfD recently. This choice, in his opinion, will determine the future of the continent for decades to come. In such a situation, it is especially interesting to observe the attempts of the elites to find an answer to new challenges. The usual methods of political pressure and compromise seem to stop working. Viktor Orban and his allies speak a language that is finding an increasing response among ordinary citizens who are tired of the bureaucracy of Brussels and policies focused on multicultural economic development. This creates additional attractiveness for his political model in the eyes of other European countries, especially those who are also dissatisfied with the economic policy of Brussels. An equally important factor is the cultural aspect of the conflict. Viktor consistently advocates the preservation of traditional European values and national identity, which resonates not only in Eastern Europe, but also in the countries of Old Europe, where more and more people are concerned about the erosion of traditional cultural identity. What will happen next? The question remains open, and Europe's future looks increasingly uncertain. Friends, do you think the new alliance of Eurosceptics will be able to change the political landscape of Europe in the near future? The answer to this question is not yet clear, but one thing is for sure. European politics has entered a new, extremely unstable phase. Experts point out that the current political crisis could have far-reaching consequences not only for Europe, but for the entire world order. The European Union has long been considered a model of international integration and cooperation, but if this project starts to fail seriously, it could affect regional integration processes around the world. We are witnessing not just another political crisis, but a fundamental transformation of the European political system, and no matter how events develop further, the old Europe will no longer exist. The only question is whether it will become more unified or more divided, or whether it will turn towards national conservatism. Against the background of these dramatic events, it is especially interesting to observe the reaction of the younger generation of Europeans. If the older generation still remembers the times before the creation of the European Union and can compare different eras, then for young people, a united Europe is the only reality they know. That is why their attitude to what is happening is especially important for understanding future political trends. Young people today find themselves in a very difficult situation, as sociologist Erika Muller comments. On the one hand, they grew up with the idea of a united Europe and got used to free movement across borders. On the other hand, they are most acutely aware of problems with employment, affordable housing, and social protection. Increasingly, they are wondering whether the current model of European integration really meets their interests. Experts note that the union of Viktor Orban and Alice Weidel may be especially attractive to the younger generation, tired of traditional political rhetoric and looking for new ways of development. Their calls for the protection of national interests and cultural identity find an unexpected response among those who would seem to be the most staunch supporters of European unity. An equally important factor in the development of the situation is the technological aspect. Modern means of communication make it possible to quickly spread alternative points of view and organize mass movements without traditional political structures. This is actively used by both Viktor Orban and Alice Weidel, skillfully building their communication through social networks and alternative media. We are witnessing the birth of a completely new political reality, as noted by media analyst Thomas. Traditional media can no longer fully shape public opinion, and political elites are losing their monopoly on shaping the agenda. This creates unique opportunities for new political movements and alliances. Meanwhile, feverish consultations are continuing in European capitals on how to respond to the current situation. Brussels is trying to find new tools to influence unruly countries, but perhaps the old methods will no longer be as effective. Time will tell how events will develop, but one thing is clear: Europe is on the verge of major changes. The traditional methods of pressure on Hungary and other countries that do not support the course of Brussels are really starting to lose their power. Every new attempt to discredit governments like the Hungarian one or strengthen the positions of Eurosceptics only makes them more popular. Against the backdrop of the political and economic crisis in Europe, this whole process resembles a catalyst that accelerates the transformation of the political landscape. More and more French politicians are starting to talk about the need to reform the European Union and return some powers to national governments. We are, in fact, on the verge of a historic moment when it will be decided whether the EU will be able to adapt to new realities or face gradual disintegration. This process no longer seems hypothetical, and the possibility that Orban's alliance with Weidel could be the catalyst that accelerates change is not so small. And now we are in an era when old alliances are crumbling and new ones are beginning to form. This is the moment when the usual political structures are collapsing, and all this raises many questions for us. We are at the very historical moment when the foundation of Europe begins to be laid, which will determine the lives of future generations. Time is the main impartial judge who will put all the dots on the end. So far, we are witnessing a grandiose political transformation, following every new step in this dramatic process. What will be the future of Europe? Will the new alliance redraw the political map of the continent? Or will a completely different scenario arise that no one thought about? Unexpected turns await us. And despite the fact that many questions remain open, it is important to continue to observe and analyze each new turn. This is a time when there is not only a change of political forces, but also a restructuring of European politics itself. Therefore, keep an eye on the development of events, and do not forget to share your thoughts. What do you think about what is happening? Perhaps right now we are all living at a key moment when the future of not only the European Union, but also the whole of Europe as a whole is being decided. Why do you think, dear friends, that I even brought up this topic today? Let's look at Germany and Hungary today. Germany, as one of the most influential countries in the European Union, has faced many challenges in recent years, many of which have resulted from its political decisions. The abandonment of Russian gas in favor of expensive alternatives, the shutdown of nuclear power plants, and the wide open doors for migrants have seriously affected the country's economy and its social stability. Inflation, rising energy prices, and a shortage of jobs have increased citizens' discontent. Instead of strengthening internal resilience, Germany seems to be increasingly torn between its commitments to the EU and the challenges it faces internally. And now let's take a look at Hungary. Viktor Orban chose a completely different path, which is perceived by many as pragmatic. Instead of entering into a tough confrontation with Russia, He maintained partnership relations, which allowed Hungary to gain access to inexpensive energy resources. This not only strengthened the country's economy, but also helped to avoid social instability associated with rising prices. In addition, Hungary clearly controls migration flows, protecting its national interests. This contrast is becoming more pronounced and raises questions about which path will be more sustainable in the future. To be honest, I look at Orban's alliance with Weidel with great interest. This is an unusual but quite logical alliance that could upend the European political system. Both policies represent an alternative to the current course of the European Union, which is increasingly causing discontent among ordinary citizens. Orban, with his tough stance on defending national interests, and Weidel, with her calls for reforms in Germany, can create a powerful political bloc that will be able to resist the Brussels bureaucracy. This union has the potential to become the voice of those who are tired of uncertainty and constant crises. We will wait and see how events unfold. This union can be both a breath of fresh air for many Europeans and provoke large-scale changes that will lead to serious upheavals. It all depends on how strategically they will act and whether they will be able to attract other allies to themselves. In any case, this new movement gives hope that Europe will be able to break the current impasse. We will see what the price of these changes will be in the near future. Thank you for your attention. Friends, be sure to write your opinion. I will be glad to read it in the comments. I wish you good health. See you later.